And after we identify those features and categories of postmodernism, we'll come up with some implications in the field of language teaching and in the field of curriculum development. So we could think here of the first implication, which is deconstruction. I mean, when we say deconstruction, challenging and breaking down traditional assumptions about teaching, learning, assessment, etc. So we could come up with more innovative, with more, with new ways of teaching and learning. We could think of new methods, and we could go even beyond the methods of teaching. We could think of alternative ways of assessment and learning. We should promote diversity and border crossing, the use of any text, newspapers, comics, novels, songs, films, internet. So it's up to the curriculum developers to promote the diversity. We should give learners a voice in constructing knowledge inside the classroom. We should shift from the learner as a passive learner to the learner as an active, as the one who contributes to constructing knowledge. And we should bridge the gap between the inside of the classroom and the outside of the classroom. Curriculum development should be seen as a socio-cultural process in which we could, investigate the environment. We could study the environment before starting the process of curriculum development. And here, the fifth implication is authenticity, the focus on authenticity. Materials should reflect real-life situations and needs. And we should be able, as teachers, to identify the discrepancies between what is in the textbook, what is represented in the textbook, and what is happening in the outside world. Sometimes there is a huge gap between what is represented in the textbook and what is taking place in the outside world. And even the learners can be faced sometimes with some imagined scenarios. As we present the world as an imagined world which is far from the reality of the outside. The 21st century LT curriculum and syllabus should be developed and designed to help learners be wise consumers and responsible producers of information available in multiple media-based formats, which will ultimately allow them to participate critically, we say critically, in multicultural knowledge construction. So it's not enough to provide students with instruction concerning vocab, grammar, etc. functions, but it's the role, of the whole curriculum developers and teachers to promote those critical skills. Again, this is the list of the bibliography. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Raki, for your nice and informative presentation. And I think you have highlighted many issues related to curriculum models, product and process, and that vacuum in between modernist and the postmodernist view of curriculum and the emergence of literacy. And I hope that all the implications that you have highlighted would be taken into consideration by all the parties, involved in the total, I would say, the total learning, teaching operation, not just teachers, but syllabus designers as well. So I think we'll open the list now for
and I'm an undergraduate student, a BA student. First of all, I would like to say it is such a great honor to have Mr. Milok among us today. Thank you for coming. I would like also to thank Mr. Aki for his presentation and Mr. Lewis for organizing this study day. My participation is in the form of an observation about the Moroccan textbook, since I'm a Moroccan student. I just would like to say that when we are at the high school stage, we notice that there is no difference between the curriculum of the Common Core. They are virtually the same. They are either add new details or add some simple courses. But when we came to, so this is the difference between the Common Core, the first year of the baccalaureate and the second year. But when we come to the university, we are required to be so fluent that we have never been presented with a course of pronunciation or something like that. I still remember myself suffering with seeing the word culture, for example, in the high school. And also I would like to say that we are very surprised because we are required to for example, in my AS1, I was required to discuss the notion of culture and present many definitions of the word culture. And I still remember a lot of my friends drop out of school, or they changed the subject or the department because they were very surprised. At the high school, we are required just to know what is simple present, what is present perfect, or something like that. But when we come to the university, we are required to be very fluent and very highly skilled in English. So this is my reservation, and I would like to just to know your reflection on it. And I have a suggestion. I'm sorry if I take so much time. I think that as far as pronunciation, we should highlight pronunciation even before coming to the university. And I would like to suggest that teaching English should start from the first year of the middle school, not till the third year. And also, the emphasis should shift from correctness to fluency. And thank you.
I'm a student of professional BA or licensed professional with the supervision or the coordination of Dr. Mohamed Larouz. First, I want to thank all the speakers and all the audience, and especially my teacher, Professor Jartet and Professor Shah, also Professor Komashi. My question is directed to Mohamed Milok. Since you have been talking about needs analysis, don't you think that's one of the main ways to assess and identify learners' needs is to focus on the idea of learner-centeredness? That's to say, we have to see things from the learner's views and from the learner's perspectives in order to answer a big question, which is that why learners don't learn what the teacher teaches. Because some researchers found that there was a great gap between the learner's perspectives and the teacher's methodology or philosophy of teaching. And I think that with as David Nolan said, with the emergence of communicative approaches to language teaching, the proponents of these approaches argued that language courses should reflect the purpose for which learners were learning. That's to say, language courses should reflect, language learners should fit learners' needs rather than fitting into the courses. And thank you.
For being here today. And I think those words that Mr. Lewis spoke of, I think Mr. Lewis, those words, those nice words, I think that he spoke with, I think will not follow the truth. I really enjoyed the presentation a lot. And my question is, just to be brief, how can you explain? I mean, we have designed, and you have designed, I mean, different, let's say, curricula to, let's say, develop the education as a overall. But how can you explain this annual, if possible, annual constant flow of civil designers, or the failure of this constant flow of designers to bring change of the overall desired outcome within the field of education? If there isn't a problem, so how can you just pin down this problem? How can you overcome this, sir? For example, like in gender studies, for example, sexism, and different textbooks designed to combat sexism, but they fail the test. So yes, or how? So how can you explain it? Thank you so much.
It's really a great opportunity for us to know how you integrate courses and solutions into the curriculum. My reaction, sorry I didn't introduce myself, Nabil is sorry for this. BA students belonging to the Department of English. My reaction is, or could be a kind of request. Don't you think it will be reasonable to integrate Moroccan culture at the university? We, of course, we study American or British culture. Yes. So, but we don't study Moroccan culture in English. So, is it a reasonable step or not? Another question related to computer technology. Don't you think it is the time to integrate computer technology into the and incorporate computers at the university? Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
People who have participated in making this event happen. Next, I will move to say that it is well known that the so-called curriculum is a never-ending process for too many reasons. Why? The first one is that the complex nature of the concept. That's why we find many researchers give to this concept many definitions. And as a result, many other researchers have talked about the different types of the curriculum. Educational curriculum, total curriculum, perceived curriculum, planned curriculum, formal, informal, etc. The second thing is that the curriculum developers take into consideration many factors, like the social factors, psychological factors, educational, and so on. My question to Dr. Luke, don't you think that the recent social changes that the Arab world witnesses will have an impact on the Moroccan curriculum? The second question is that don't you think that the discourse or the speech of our king in last March will not have an impact on our Moroccan curriculum? If yes, I wonder if you could clarify how. If no, I wonder also if you could say any show why.
Could you repeat the second question, please? Sorry, second question.
Second question is the relationship between the speech of our king in last March with the new curriculum. And then my question to Mr. Akiboli, how can we integrate media in the curriculum? Some strategies, because this is, the topic of my thesis this year.
Your Master Linguistics program. Actually, it's an honor to have Mr. Malok with us today. Thank you for the enlightened presentation and key too. Okay. So I have two questions for Dr. Malok. The first one, you started with the distinguishing between the two types of curriculum. Okay, you have process-oriented curriculum and the product-oriented curriculum. I will focus on the process-oriented. Talk about the inclination. That it's possible to have inclinations in the process and design, given the cyclic nature of the curriculum. My question is about the political decisions. I mean, political decision making in the process. Does it change? Does it stay fixed? Given the fact that it is an important element within the process itself.
Can you turn your cell phone off? Your cell phone. Do you have a cell phone?
Yeah.
Can you turn it on?
No.
Okay, go ahead.
Well, I'm wondering the position and the importance, the salience of the political decision and political decision making, though, because it's very important in the deciding upon the content of the curriculum as a whole, because it's the general philosophy. And the second question is about the definition of the syllabus. You quoted one of the scholars, and he said that the syllabus is a plan to carry out the specification of the content of curriculum part. Okay, this curriculum is general, and the syllabus is, of course, having in mind the section between the American and the British traditions. And the definition was, it's a plan without evaluation. But in another slide, you have the syllabus with the 3 steps model, selecting the material and the activities, organizing the content and the activities, and then the evaluation, the assessment. Though there is a difference between evaluation and assessment. Whether was it slip the computer maybe of the scholar, or evaluation is not important, though we know that evaluation is again one of the most important steps, whether in a course design or a service design or even in a curriculum in general. Okay, no, thank you.
Yes, of Meknes, and this is my first year as a teacher of English. So my question will be addressed to Mr. Mohammed Malouk as he tackled the issue of teachers' autonomy. So to be autonomous, to be an autonomous teacher, it means to be creative. It means to create or to make your own activities and your own games. But as you see, the course is too long and exhausting. So how can you have a margin of time to do these activities inside class? Because I find the course too long and exhausting, and you cannot find time to be creative, so to speak. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
So good morning, everybody. My name is Walid. I'm the second year master program of Applied Language Studies and Research in Higher Education as PAS. So first, I'd like to thank the 2 guest speakers for their highly informative presentations. I will start first with addressing Professor Malouk for his talk about the curriculum development, and I'd like first, and I will be very pragmatic in the way I'm going to address you. First, we know that the quality of higher education depends on 2 components. Before the curriculum and before anything else, we have the teacher and the students, which are the main protagonists of any educational system. And you talked about McBee's model of the needs analysis. Do you think that our Moroccan textbook developers, this is why I said I don't need it in the first place.
You can do that.
Yes, thank you. So what I was saying is this. Do you think that our Moroccan textbook developers or textbook designers take into consideration the teachers and students while, I mean here I'm talking about the level of needs analysis, take them into consideration before coming out with the syllabus? This is the first question. The second question, do you think that it's high time that we redefine the curricula, okay, in terms of methodology, in terms of assessment? This is due to the ongoing change. We know the vast amounts of new knowledge that's being produced every year. We know that, for example, the knowledge in chemistry is doubling in more than 5 months, in computing less than 2 months. Do you think this is a threat to curricula in terms of both methodology, and Mr. Kaz talked about the role of ICTs? Okay, now today, students are not only consumers of knowledge but also producers of information. Don't you think this should be taken into consideration, while they're developing curricula? This is in one hand. Second hand, don't you think it's high time for the shift, to be from the transmission of knowledge to the generating it? This is my second question. And the third question is addressed to Key, and you talked about media literacy. And I think the last slide of your presentation talked about the fact that students have become producers of information. To what extent do you think that they are literate enough to produce the information, and what measures should be taken into consideration to make them aware of this fact? Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Walid.
Thank you, Professor Malouk, for coming. Thank you for your presentation.
Actually, thank you for coming, and thank you for the presentation.
I'm Fuad Boulaid. I'm the second year master program with you, Professor Larousse. So same time, I'm a staff member of the Student Affairs at Akhawan University. I have two recommendations, or if you don't mind, questions. Why not incorporate teachers' needs? Because you talk about students' needs and society and subject matter, but we forget about the teacher himself in the classroom and his, let's say, income in his salary and the equipment in the class, the environment where he or she works. And at the same time, the second recommendation is about the student himself, herself. The student, we know that he is, the student, he is or she is the product, and the process are the same time. Product of the elementary school, from elementary, middle school till the high school, or at the university is too late. So we have to think of the students at the elementary school. The ministry provides the students with the huge stuff. I would recommend, why not, throughout my observation, if I may observe. Of course, you will say that it needs to conduct research on this, but if I may observe, students at the elementary school has to focus on three elements: language, it's Arabic, French, and maths. Because now at the, let's say, at the lycée, the students' pitfalls trace back to these elements. If the student is competent in maths, can analyze even the language itself, can produce, can think critically. If student has a good language, especially at, let's say, especially in Morocco, that's Arabic, we can at the same time, through its grammar, through its conjugation, that's Arab, we can also be competent in maths. And in French, you know, it's students at lycée, at university cannot produce an essay, cannot write a letter in French. So at the middle school, that's college in Moroccan Arabic, then we need to incorporate computer, other languages, physics, maths, and other sciences. So bear in mind that the students, by the end of that's the ninth year, that's TESA, by the end of this secondary school, the student has to be competent in all. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Rashid Eliasmi. I'm a student, Department of English, of Master Program of Linguistics, second year. So my question, in fact, is going to be about the concept of curriculum development. So as you have mentioned, Mr. Muluk, you talked about curriculum as an umbrella term, or as a general term you have been, I would say, illuminated throughout your presentation. So don't you think that curriculum development entails teachers' development and textbook designers' development as well? In the sense that you have talked about curriculum development as a philosophy that is divided into perennialism, essentialism, progressivism as well. Does a textbook designer should take into account all these kinds of philosophy so that to design or to devise a textbook? That's all. Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, good morning. Much for attending for this session and for providing your fun and highly distinguished presentation. And my thanks to our brother and our friend Aki and our professor, the coordinator, who never even ceased from seizing any initiative to provide us with highly important ideas from the authorities like Mr. Luke. Thank you very much. So my question for you, Professor Luke, is really grounded on Bourdieu's philosophy and his notion of the habitus and then the symbolic violence. I noticed that this goes hand in hand with the curriculum development. If I notice that those, again, aims that are meant by the curriculum development goes incongruously with the habitus, which is the institution available, how can this curriculum develop and achieve its aims? Secondly, and here I'd like to go to Aki, when you talked about postmodernist era and its relationship to the curriculum development. I think with modernism, we talked a lot about rationalism, we talked a lot about science and then the essentialism. And here we have a norm to follow. But with the emergence of the postmodernist era, I think there is no center. And here there is the acceptance of the difference. And different points of view would be acceptable. But if we have different points of view without a norm to follow, I don't think that we will attain to a certain objective. Maybe we'll end up with lower standards if we follow the needs of the student. And maybe we will end up with oblivion and even with a dark, again, vision. That's an issue. And here, concerning again the postmodernist era, I would like again to refer back to the Chomsky's notion that the postmodernist era is still again normative in the sense that it follows and it aims to reproduce the model of the United States, which means that the norm is still again the reproduction of Anglophone standards or the Anglophone norms and values. So, do you think that there is any clear cut between the modernist and then the postmodernist era concerning the curriculum development? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr.
Tech person, so that's not a problem. So thank you very much. So thanks for your highly informative presentations. So I have a very specific question, but I would like to go back to one of the definitions here. I think that curriculum refers to all the learning that is planned and guided by the school, in groups or individually, inside or outside. So in any case, the very first thing to do is probably we have to specify what we're seeking to achieve, right? And how we are to go about it, right? And this will probably lead me to 4 ways of approaching curriculum theory and practice, right? Bearing in mind Aristotle's influential categorization of knowledge into 3 main disciplines: the theoretical, the practical, and finally the productive. So the first one is that curriculum can be considered as a knowledge or as a body of knowledge to be transmitted. So here, this is very often in context where curriculum is equated with syllabus. Number 2, curriculum as an attempt to achieve certain ends in students, that is, product. Number 3, curriculum as process, and finally as praxis. And I would like to go to the word praxis because I think you sort of mentioned a key word in curriculum development, and I was expecting, more, let's say, explanation, because that is a word, right, that needs some highlighting. So I would like you to talk, I wouldn't say detail, but just a few words about praxis, because I think that is very nice, because that is action. It's not only action, but something that is committed. So, if you don't mind, right, so I would like you to talk about that. And thanks a lot. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Professor.
I'm a new high school teacher. I would like to thank everybody here for giving us the chance to listen to good English, because I spent that year teaching students, and it's rarely when you hear a well-formed sentence. Okay, borrowing from Mr. Fuad Akid, 2011, he said there is no innocent curriculum. Okay, this is, I think, in my point of view, this is a positive thing. So how can we benefit from this point to promote some morals, ethics, or some Moroccan culture? How can we use this point? Okay. The second thing is that I remarked that we use the terms syllabus and curriculum interchangeably. Is there any clear distinction between the two terms, or they refer to the same thing? Thank you.
No lady over here wanted to ask questions, so I take this opportunity. A minute, Okay, well, first of all, I'd like to thank Mr. and Professor Linguistics, associate teacher of linguistics over here, also communication and business English, sociolinguistics, well, a lot of interest. Okay, also thank you, my student, Heki, for his presentation. Well, in fact, I do have comments and questions. Concerning the curriculum, there have been a lot of reconsiderations of the curriculum and from theory to practice. And again, I would like to join our professor here, asking for the word practice. In fact, it should be how to practice. Because the curriculum is there, we think about rechanging and updating the curriculum, but we never think about how to put the theory into practice. So this is a big, big problem, because when we speak about the role of the teacher and the role of the students, which I think they are, they complement each other. For example, I will speak about my experience putting the theory into practice. I do have a lot of problems in here at the university because of the lack of equipment, tools, because of the lack of also the feedback of the students, because I would like to speak about the students since they are here, means when we see, when we put a course description and speak about objectives, purposes, and intended outcome as you described, we are so clear to say this is what we normally we are expected from the student to handle by the end of the year, but normally while practicing, we don't have a feedback required and needed from the students, because only 10% of the classroom participate and the others are only guest students, and also we have ghost students. Okay? So we have both. Guests and ghosts. To the extent that I keep repeating, I don't have tea and cookies for you, I'm sorry. So how to evaluate, since we don't have an oral exam, how to evaluate the communicative competence or communicative skill of students, this is the first thing. Second, why don't we opt for, or to describe within the curriculum the methodology of teaching of some subjects that should be also, I would say, part of the teacher training. Okay, like roundtables in discussions. We don't have roundtables. We don't even think about roundtables, only in master studies. Okay. Why don't we also use space of the university, like, for example, wants to give, not only to give a lecture in the same room, why not to use other spaces, like to go to the conference room over here and make like a theater and ask students to act. That's a way to read. These are just suggestions, maybe some crazy suggestions, but why not to implement them into the practice? Because since we are speaking about theory to practice, okay, it is also a way to improve students' pronunciation. Because let's say that in S1-2 we keep teaching theory, and we practice students from taking the floor and speak and improve themselves from S1. But we start giving the floor to students to practice until S3, and they feel kind of reluctant and reserved. They are a little bit reserved. Why? Because in S2 and S1 and S2 they were only listener, and so they enjoy keeping just listening rather than participating. Well, I will stop here because yes, a lot to say, but yes, I would like your reaction just upon this, I think.
Okay, thank you very much. I would like you and invite you to take the initiative whenever you see the opportunity presented to you. And thank you. You know, I think somebody is beseeching and begging and he's raising his hand and he wants to ask you. Shall we give him the floor? Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Professor our coordinator, Dr. Leroux. Actually, I have two questions. The first one is concerned with the issue of culture. As you know that communication, especially successful communication, is not restricted to just only to the linguistics rule, but also to other dimensions, especially cultural or socio-cultural dimensions. Then culture has been emphasized as a key element in the field of communication. My question is, what is the position of culture in this curriculum development? Second question is about the role of textbooks in language teaching. Are really textbooks reflected the aims and the objectives designed for the curriculum development? And thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Made by the okay, I think you started the order is presented. No, Professor, politically correct. To be politically correct, you have to start.
We are among friends, come on.
That's okay.
And for the questions and also the comments and the observations, I don't think I'm very well equipped to answer all of those or to react to all of those questions, because they were, so interesting and so deep, so profound. Anyway, I'll try to do my best to try to react as quickly as I can. I'll try maybe to join or put 3 or 4 questions at the same time. I will start with this maybe distinction that we need to keep in mind, at least in practical terms. When we talk about curriculum, whatever the conception that we adopt, whatever the conception, whatever it is, I think at one stage we have to make a distinction between the curriculum, the design, the processes, and so on, and teaching. That means the implementation of the curriculum. Obviously, when we design it, we have to incorporate our view, the methodology, and everything in our curriculum. But there is, let's not put together, or let's not put in the same basket, the design of the curriculum itself, and the actual implementation, the real implementation. Why is this important? Because, there is no ideal curriculum. It doesn't exist. In the same way that there is no ideal textbook. It doesn't exist. So, when we say that the curriculum should include, because this is what I heard, should include this or that or this, in terms of methodology, in terms of practice, because I wanted to react to this. When we say curriculum as practice, that's the second stage. See, curriculum as practice, it's the second stage or the third stage, after it has gone through a number of stages. Now, how do we judge a curriculum? We judge it as practice, because in terms of applications, in terms of identifying. Now, if theoretically or philosophically you adopt what I was saying concerning, and it was, I think, key for doing this, just point to the fact that it is possible to think of curriculum as practice from this perspective, deconstruction. Now, I just wanted to add something to what he was saying. In that case, we need to deconstruct the system. We need to deconstruct the school before we deconstruct the curriculum. Because it's no use destructing the curriculum without deconstructing the school, without deconstructing the whole system. In that case, we will achieve, and it's idealistic. It's idealistic. And this, in fact, reminds me of that experience that took place in England some 50 years ago, which is called, it was done, it's called Summerhill. I don't know whether anybody has read about this. It's in the book, Summerhill. You know, these two, a couple of ex-teachers, they decided to start an experience. A school, a private school. And this school, there is a curriculum, there is a program, but it's the learners, they were invited to come when they wanted, to go to the lessons that they wanted, and to get out whenever they wanted, and then to ask how they wanted to learn and more or less to negotiate what they wanted to do. There were no timetables for classes or levels, there were timetables for teachers. Okay, and the students, you know, the learners, they came in, it's just like going into a restaurant. There is a menu, they would pick what they want, and then they could stay there for 10, 15 minutes. They would even select the way that they wanted to be evaluated. Okay, now this is total deconstruction. Now it's the system. It's not only the curriculum, it's the system. Okay, I want to maybe just go to another thing. Why I'm saying this, let's make a difference between the curriculum and then the teaching, the actual practices of teaching. Somebody asked the question of, for example, in one of the models that I presented, there is no assessment. I tell you why, very simply. You know, there are people in educational departments in many countries. They say, okay, we have a curriculum, it is our business. Now, as far as testing and evaluation, it's not my business. There are professional bodies who do this. For example, obviously that curriculum is supposed to prepare the students for the type of exams that they will have, they will take. You see? And we have an American friend here who can tell you about the SAT, the Scholastic Aptitude Tests. They are not a part of the curriculum, they are totally independent. Standardized tests. If you go to England, you have the Cambridge ILS, the Cambridge Local Examination, which has nothing to do with the curriculum. They are apart from the curriculum. But the curriculum is designed in such a way as to prepare the students for these types of tests that they will take. Am I right? Okay. So that's why in some models, you know, evaluation is not included. Apart from, you know, continuous evaluation or formative evaluation, you know, quizzes, tests, but the formal tests and so on, they are apart. That's one type of model. Okay, now, when we say curriculum, again, you said, somebody suggested that we should include teachers' needs. Okay, now, teacher is part of the system. He will be in charge of the. Now, if I say, normally it's not done, but if, let's say, we take into account teachers' needs, they are professionals. They are supposed to be professional educators and professionals in their field. I would agree with you that they should take part in the design of the curriculum. I agree with you on this. But not in terms of their individual or idiosyncratic needs, no. Now, those characteristics have to be taken into account when it comes to constraints. If I design a curriculum and then I don't have qualified teachers to do that, then what's the use of it? If that is what you mean, I agree with you. But in that case, you see, so it's Some other questions probably that are interesting. This issue of culture, Moroccan culture and the university, or Moroccan culture in textbooks, or the importance of culture to achieve communication. I think, these, I don't know, let me take you back, not all of you, but some of you who know this. Back in the 80s, here in Morocco, there were some textbooks which were, half Moroccan culture and half British culture, American. But most of it was Moroccan culture. Those textbooks did not survive, simply because students refused them. They didn't like them. They said, we don't want to know about our culture. We know it already. It's problematic. I agree with you. There is no, I don't know, it's very difficult to say we should or we should not. We need to be very careful, very selective, and then we need to do some research on this issue of whether students will accept it or not. And more than this, sometimes the culture itself, because when you introduce culture, either you present stereotypes, you present habits, customs, you present certain elements of culture in the target language, and then you have problems how you would find certain words, certain terminology to express that culture. Because then you will find yourself in trouble, because the students say, okay, how do you say this in English? I challenge you to answer some of the questions of the students. And even at the university, I used to, sometimes somebody says, how do you say this in English? There's no equivalent in English. So maybe, I don't know, we can take it into consideration, we can incorporate some of it, but I believe that, that's my personal, you might disagree with me, but my belief is that it's when we introduce the foreign culture that we can come back to our culture, but not the reverse. It's whenever we have the opportunity to have the students discuss, cultural patterns, cultural habits, customs, not only in the States or England, but elsewhere. That will be an opportunity for students and teachers to reflect on our own culture, but not teach our own culture directly, because that is taken care of in other subjects anyway. Now, the issue of morals, for example, I think that if you look at some of the textbooks, recent ones, Moroccan textbooks at the secondary school level, there is an attempt at taking care of those issues, especially in terms of citizenship, because it's through this that we can incorporate certain values of citizenship, solidarity, cooperation, tolerance. Probably it's there. We have other subjects that take care of those things. Social changes in the Arab world and King's speech and curriculum and political decisions and everything. I think this also what we were saying about this discrepancy between what is done and then the outcome and the issue of evaluation. One of the mistakes, at least at the secondary school level, is that we have divorced teaching from assessing, especially with the absence of the oral exams in the baccalaureate, and then our colleague here at the university. Now, again, this is something I have been pressing for whenever I have the opportunity to say it to decision makers, the ones who will take decisions at the highest level. And, they always bring the problem of logistics, the problem of organization, and so on and so forth. I think our colleagues here, they know more about this. But it will be an interesting and important thing, maybe to reconsider. I agree with you. If I may say, one of the probably the weakest links in our system is evaluation. Why? it's not because we do not have good people who can design good tests and so on, or we cannot. It's simply because of our culture does not accept evaluation. And we haven't incorporated in our behavior accepting evaluation. Because, evaluation has always been, put together with punishment and associated with recrimination, punishment, and what is the result? The end result of this is that students do not learn, they work for exams. And one of the challenges is how we can change this attitude, this behavior. So everything that we do, and teachers themselves in fact, they find themselves doing the same thing. And if you try to be creative, or if you want to be, learner-centered, there will be students who will say, hey, we don't have this in exam. Remember, we will have exams. You see, so some compromise probably must be found somewhere. I mentioned this just to go back to these decisions. Political decisions. Over the last 10 years or 15 years, been near to these decision makers. And unfortunately, what happens with our educational system is that sometimes there are internal political fights and ideologies, and so what we end up, working with compromises, and it's mid-road, and it's very difficult. If you I'll give one example. One example, because that's something that I've been living for 3 years now. It's the issue of the medium of instruction, language of instruction, for science and technology. I say, how come, Moroccan students learn science in Arabic in secondary school, and then when they go to university, they have to switch to French? It's a system that we need to deconstruct. Believe me, when you sit with, representatives of political parties, trade unions, professionals, it's very difficult to have an agreement. And there are hisabat, and you understand what I mean anyway. I think these changes, they will have, what's going on, they will have important and interesting implications for education as well as for curriculum. I'm sure it's in near future. You will see that at least some of the things will be included. And I heard some interesting, suggestions. I think they're worth keeping in mind. Of course, reality is one thing, and then what we design. Remember that we are talking about public education. We're not talking about private education. Public education, that means it's the responsibility of the community, which has delegated this responsibility to governments and to decision makers. So the issue here is that we want to construct society, to make society evolve, and we want to achieve some sort of equity and equality. And we want also to achieve equal opportunity. I'm sorry to repeat these principles, which are highly ideological and political. But if we want to have a society that is coherent and cohesive, that you need to offer the same chances, knowing that you will not, what you will achieve in terms of intended outcomes, will vary from one individual to another, from one town to another, from one region to another one, depending on the circumstances and values. If we were dealing with private education, that's something else. Then we have more freedom. So social responsibility, I think it's something that, and that's why we cannot respond, or the system cannot respond to all the people's needs. You know, just like the English say it. You know, you can respond to you can respond to some people's needs some of the time, but you cannot respond to all the people's needs all the time. It's very difficult. It's gymnastics. The other thing, and this is in terms of policy and especially changes. You know, when people, that means when I say people, population, teachers, students, everything are conceived of within a system, a social system of assisted. You know, that means they are not actors, they are assisted. Then obviously what would you expect? It's when they become actors, then things change, they might change. I think I should stop here. Anyway, as I said, really interesting. I don't think I can answer all of those. Since I have the floor, I just want to make a very, as far as I'm concerned, an important comment. I appreciated your presentation, but I have one reservation, one slight reservation, when you were talking about these new literacies. You know, both in the United States and in Europe now, you know, they are now discovering the damages made by the overuse of the internet, and especially these social networks, especially on young adolescents. So we have to be very careful not to go into this direction and take it for granted, because we have no control of what is circulated there in terms of content, in terms of, I don't know, values, in terms of behavior, you see. So it's, we need to be aware of this, and I agree with you. You said at one point that we have to be critical. And how can you be critical? How can you develop a critical mind, critical thinking, if you don't have some sort of formal? Because we have to make up your mind. You see, whether you want, you know, this socially and humanistic approach, because you know, when you look at the tendency today, we say, okay, after all, since the school or the university is a social community, probably the first thing that we should target is happiness. Happiness of the people. Yes, happiness. If that is, if we can make people happy, but happy combined with something useful, something that they can use in a critical mindset, that they can make informed choices. The problem is how we can bring students to make informed choices rather than, you know, just like those hungry consumers, anything that comes in, because after all, it's, most of it is garbage, garbage in, garbage out. And if you say that they can contribute to producing information, but the quality of that, most of it is garbage. And we have seen it, we see it, and especially the young ones, they know this. Sorry, if I've taken my...
It's okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Now I give the floor to Yanaki to react.
Okay, thank you very much for your questions. Will not take lots of time. I think that Professor Luke has given an overview, of all questions.
I have to answer the questions that were asked to you. No, you will not go away with it.
Okay, I will start with the issue of culture. What sort of culture should be represented in the text? I'm with the view that we should, the textbook should reflect the local culture of the students. Because I do believe that to understand the world, if you want to understand the world, you should first understand yourself. The key to understand the world is an awareness of the self. This is one of the features and one of the aspects of the postmodern thought, which is self-reflexiveness. That we should start with ourselves. We should start by understanding the self, and then after that we could understand the world.
Excuse me. Excuse me if I interrupt you here, so as not to be mistaken with this slide, because what I was saying, I reacted to this. Now, are you talking about, this awareness through a foreign language or through the mother tongue?
Through the foreign language.
What about the mother tongue?
We could think about the mother tongue. Why not? We could integrate it within
the first
process of learning and teaching. Okay, just.
Yes, sorry.
When I say that, I don't oppose the foreign cultures, the American or the British cultures, the target cultures. What I thought is that those cultures should be included within the global culture, because we live in the era of globalization. The student is no longer. The student spends a lot of time outside the classroom more than he spends inside the classroom. The students have access to the new technologies. They talk, they interact with different people all over the world. So it's the whole time that we should introduce the global culture, so as that we could have the access to the international communication, so that we could communicate internationally. Concerning the students as producers of knowledge, I do agree that the use of the internet and the use of the technologies should be used safely and responsibly. This is why I say that we should foster those critical skills, the visual literacy, media literacy, critical literacy, so that we could come up with learners who know how to use the internet. So that everybody has the access to the information through the internet. But the problem is with the question how to benefit from the information, how to be selective, how to choose, how to convince the others, and how to be aware of the ideological and cultural aspects of those who have access to the internet. Concerning the postmodernism thought, I come up with the term deconstruction, because I do believe that we are witnessing an era of crisis, especially in education. While we are witnessing a crisis. Deconstruction comes up to deconstruct those problems. Deconstruction believes in allowing different people to interact, believes in different views, different perspectives, because we have a problem. If you want to solve that problem, you should be able to elicit different views. This is why I say that we should focus in the classroom on the discussion and problem-solving activities, so as to bridge the gap between the inside and the outside. If we treat the outside, we could even treat the inside. Concerning the question of praxis, if we should go into details to concerning, I think, Professor Jardin's question of praxis.
Yes, praxis.
Praxis.
Sorry.
Action.
Sorry to interrupt. Praxis. Next. Why? Yes. Because we've been exposed to a lot of new words, highly technical words, and aware of language teaching, very complex, because if you think of learners' curriculum, they all overlap. And therefore, it's not easy for a novice to put a demarcation line between these things. So I think that we need really other sessions, to highlight these things. We need more than that.
Okay, so concerning the term, I think that Grande in 1987 talks about that in one of his books, Curriculum Praxis. So what he means exactly is those implicit things that could be included within the textbooks. I mean, those ideological and cultural aspects that may disempower the learner. Maybe there may be another learning as a committed action, but in this book, he gives much importance to the praxis as something which is implicit, as something which is ideological, as something that might disempower the learners in the classroom.
Thank you.
Okay. I will move now to the... Yes, okay. Now to the integration of the ICTs within the educational system and within the curriculum. We should know that we have obstacles and we have challenges. This is what I said at the very beginning, that we should conduct environmental analysis or environment analysis before starting the issue of before conducting curriculum design, because the environment has so many problems. Okay, and thank you very much.
Okay, I'd like to thank the two presenters, really prominent speakers this morning. So looking forward to seeing you in this afternoon, inshallah, starting at 3 o'clock. And thank you so much for your patience. Thank you.
Well, I think I have to do it. Welcome to this afternoon session. We start by Dr. Ahmed Shafi from Faculty of Education, Rabat. His presentation will be about word meaning in dictionaries and corpora, the case of X-Heiden. Mr. Shafi, the floor is yours. 45 minutes, I think. Thank you.
Thank you. Today's presentation. Today's presentation is about word meaning in dictionaries and in corpora. I suppose that everybody knows what a dictionary is. What may not be known is what a corpus is. So, a corpus or corpus linguistic. A corpus, the plural is corpora, or text corpus, is a large and structured set of texts. It can be some 1,000 words long, up to billions of words long. Okay, and the texts are electronically stored and processed. But it's not a question of going through the texts reading every page, but it can be processed electronically, that is, through computers. They are used to do statistical analysis and hypothesis testing, not only regarding word meaning, but also regarding structures, etc. So checking occurrences or validating linguistic rules on a specific universe. I was supposed to show you what a corpus is, mainly by visiting the British National Corpus site, which is in in front of you, the British National Corpus, and to show you how to use it. That is, you have an empty box in which you type a word, and you get a number of sentences in which the word in question occurs. And by going through the examples, you can study word meaning in context. A corpus, because it is electronically stored and processed, can give us what is called the concordance. A word occurs in its context. That is, it selects only, you give the instruction to the computer either 3 words before, 3 words after, and you get a long concordance, a long list in which you have only 3 or 4 words before the word in question, or 3 or 4 or 5, depending on your choice, on the right. Again, if you want to know what a concordance is, you need to visit this site. It's not very difficult to get to the list. Okay, you just choose a word and you get your result. Now, the question is, do dictionaries reflect? A corpus is basically authentic examples which were produced by native speakers. The question is, do dictionary definitions really reflect the meaning that is used in context, in authentic examples? Now, the example I took, not very special, an adjective exciting. Now, this is what a dictionary says about exciting. For example, the Oxford Advanced Learners Dictionary of Current English and Merriam-Webster's reference. We will compare between the 2 dictionaries in order to see to what extent they agree or diverge concerning the meaning of this adjective. Do not provide a separate, these 2 dictionaries taken simply because the only dictionaries I have. If you have other dictionaries, you can check them. These 2 dictionaries do not provide a separate entry for the adjective excited. Instead, they assume that the meaning of the adjective exciting can be inferred from the meaning of the verb excite. And we shall see whether, and the assumption is that the meaning of the adjective can be inferred from that of the corresponding verb. We shall see the extent to which this is true. And by going through authentic examples, as I told you, we shall see whether this practice is correct or not. The Oxford Advanced Learners Dictionary of Current English defines excite, the verb, in the following way. The verb has 3 meanings. The first, the verb is transitive. Excite to means stir up the feeling of, cause somebody to feel strongly. And you have an example, don't excite yourself. Keep calm. The second meaning, to excite in somebody, to excite an emotion in somebody, is to get a feeling in motion, rouse, bring about. Example, excite admiration, excite envy, affection in an audience, excite a riot. The third meaning is cause a bodily organ to be active. For example, drugs that excite the nerves. So remember that the Oxford Dictionary has 3 meanings. Let's compare it to the other dictionary. Instead of 3, we have 4 meanings. 4 senses. The first is to call to activity. Remember that we are talking about foreign language learning. We have to take these definitions into consideration while, that is, how the foreign language learner uses these definitions. The first one has three substances. The first is to call to activity. We should start questioning the use of such definitions. What for a foreign language learner, what is to call to activity? How useful is this definition? B, to rouse to an emotional response. Example, scenes to excite the hardest man to pity. And C, sub-meaning C, to arouse as a strong emotional response by appropriate stimuli. Example, excite enthusiasm for the new regime. From Arthur Knight, I suppose that he or she is a writer. So you see the meanings, the first and the second meaning of the Oxford Dictionary are here in this dictionary are just substances, not separate meanings. Number two, to energize as a synonym, excite an electromagnet. And this sense was not mentioned in the Oxford Dictionary. 3, to increase the activity of as a living organism is stimulate, and that's sense 3 in the Oxford Dictionary. 4, to raise as an atomic nucleus, an atom or a molecule to a higher energy level. This sense was not mentioned in the Oxford Dictionary. This is an indication that a dictionary is not a manual for use of the language. A dictionary is simply an attempt by the dictionary compilers to come up with some help for the language learner. A comparison. Let's compare between the two dictionaries. The Oxford Dictionary gives 3 meanings. The Merriam-Webster gives 4. Merriam-Webster gives sub-meanings for first and second meanings. Oxford Dictionary gives none. Meanings 2 and 4 of Merriam-Webster are not mentioned in the Oxford Dictionary. Meanings 1 and 2 of Oxford are listed under the same meaning in Merriam-Webster as sub-meanings. So you see, we picked 2 dictionaries and they diverge concerning regarding this particular adjective. Let's consider more dictionaries. The word net. Word net is, I suppose that you should go to the internet to read about WordNet. WordNet is a sort of dictionary developed by psycholinguists, and the interest or the purpose is not to give only the meaning of words, but also to relate words with other words. So this dictionary provides 8 senses. First we have 3, second we have 4, and now we have 8 senses. Excite means to arouse or elicit a feeling. Any feeling. Not necessarily positive. And this should be remembered when we come to the implication of studying emotion words. 2, stimulate. Act as a stimulant. The book stimulated her imagination. 3, energized. Raise to a higher energy level. Excite the atoms. Stimulate, stir or stir feelings in. You see here the excite is related to stimulate. 5, agitate, rouse, turn on, charge up. The speaker charge up the crowd with his inflammatory remarks. Arouse, wind up. This arouses the male audience. Some of these senses cannot be found in the previous dictionaries. Stimulate, shake up. The civil war shook the country, excited the country. Here, the meaning is negative connotation. Produce a magnetic field. Now, another dictionary, Microsoft Encarta, you can find it with the encyclopedia. Instead of 8, this dictionary provides 9 senses. And what is important for us is the first 2. Stimulate favorably, that is, excite can mean stimulate favorable emotions, and the second meaning stimulate somebody unfavorably, to stimulate unfavorable emotions, etc. We have a number of, we don't need to go through each one. What is important is the point. The point is that dictionaries do not converge, simply because word meaning is not there for us to just pick up. It doesn't stare us in the face. We have to do a lot of work, a lot of effort, well, and at the end we may not converge, we may not agree about the number of meanings or senses that a word has. Now, let's compare excite with the adjective exciting and to see whether the adjective can really be, the meaning of the adjective can really be inferred from that of the verb. And the verb now has 9 senses. Now, Microsoft Encarta and WordNet are the only two, the first two. Remember, the first two did not provide a separate entry for the adjective. These two provided the entry for the adjective exciting. Now, for Microsoft Encarta, exciting means causing excitement. And what is excitement? Causing feelings of happiness, enthusiasm, or nervousness and tension. So exciting can mean both feelings, to cause feelings of happiness and enthusiasm, or nervousness and tension. WordNet, creating or arousing excitement, an exciting account of a trip. Second meaning, stimulating interest and discussion. Here we have disagreement. Stimulating interest and discussion, an exciting novel, is not mentioned in the Microsoft Encarta dictionary. If we go back to the number of senses listed by the other dictionaries, we will find that a number of senses are not included in the adjective. So, if the meaning of the adjective can be inferred from some meanings of the verb, the other meanings are not included in the adjective. Some remarks. The adjective does not express meaning 3 in the Oxford Dictionary, or meanings 2, 3, and 4 in Merriam-Webster. In a sense, a foreign language learner cannot infer the meaning of the adjective exciting directly from the meaning of that of the verb. WordNet, exciting novel, interesting. WordNet lists this sense as a separate one. This meaning is not specific to the verb. If you go back and listen and go through the 9 meanings of the verb excite, we will not find a meaning that corresponds to interest. For example, you cannot say the novel excites me in the sense of interests me. Now, if you excite interest, you can say excite interest, excite envy, excite enthusiasm, etc. If you excite interest means interesting, so exciting is synonymous with interesting. But excite enthusiasm, can we say that exciting is synonymous with enthusiastic, etc.? If yes, can exciting mean interesting, enthusiastic, etc.? I suppose that's not correct. Now let's go to the corpus. Exciting in the British National Corpus. Excite, if you type the verb excite, you will get 208 hits. That is 208 examples. But if you type exciting, you will get 3,266 hits. Which means that exciting is more current, is more used than the verb excite. And this is, for a language learner, this piece of information is important. Verb plus, let's classify the examples. Now, by the way, when you type the examples, you can get examples like this, and you underline the verb plus the direct object, and you start studying each and every example, grouping them into categories or classes, and you infer. what should be done to write a dictionary? Verb plus emotion and nouns. You can say excite interest, excite feeling of ingratitude, excite sympathy, excite doubts, excite curiosity. These examples, again, should be compared with the definitions of the dictionary. Do the definitions provided by the dictionary account for these cases to excite interest? Now let's go back to the definitions of some dictionaries. For example, the Oxford Dictionary, which is very widely used by Moroccan students. Excite, number one, to stir up the feeling of, to cause somebody to feel strongly. And number two, to excite in somebody a feeling, to get a feeling in motion, to rouse, to bring about. Now let's go back again to the examples. Excite interest. If you want to apply the definitions, excite a feeling of ingratitude, excite sympathy, excite doubts, curiosity, resentment, disgust, pity, disrespect. All these are taken from the authentic examples, are not invented. Verb plus abstract nouns. Excite reaction, excite comment, attention, speculation, imagination, thought, ridicule, opposition, appetite, smiles, ideas. Verb plus concrete nouns. Excite emissaries, excite supporters, excite the crowd, the public, family, the baseball player, muscles, audiences, a botanist. Again, all these are taken from authentic. I hope that you, in the exercise, you take the dictionary and you compare the definition with the examples. And you see the extent to which that definition really accounts for each and every occurrence of a word in occurrence. The discrepancy would become very, very clear. Now, the adjective. Adjectives plus activities. Exciting introduction, exciting proposition, exciting competition, expedition, development, service, news, ride, exciting fights, exciting work, exciting dancing, investment, game, phone calls, adjective plus things, exciting selection of hues, colors, exciting drinks, hairstyles, styling ideas, an exciting book, exciting products, birthday present, rivers, educational material, horse, doorways, samples, cigarettes and beer, items for sale, objects, relics, etc. Again, these are taken from individual examples. Adjective plus human. You say an exciting woman, an exciting beige man, an exciting girl, an exciting young females, exciting young striker, a striker in a baseball sport, an exciting sportsman. Can you just imagine what an exciting sportsman is? Given the dictionary definitions. Places. London is exciting, an exciting town. Again, if excitement or to excite means to rouse positive feelings and negative feelings, how do we understand an exciting town? Exciting cities, exciting places, an exciting museum. Seville in Spain is exciting. Or Essex, an exciting location. Adjective plus time, exciting nights, exciting days, year, times, periods of change, exciting summer holidays. Now, the meaning and dictionary definition. And here I have two examples. Again, I invite you to speculate. The use of the dictionary. The use of the dictionary definitions. The video guide gives advice on how to use the video and exciting ideas for activities to try in the classroom. which of the first two meanings of the Oxford Dictionary would you select for the first case? Let's go back again to the Oxford Dictionary. The first is to stir up the feelings of. The second is to get a feeling in motion. Rose bring about. If we forget about three because it's distinct. Now please look at the two meanings, senses, and we will go back again to the example to see which of the two definitions fits the example beforehand. Now we have to stir up the feelings and to get a feeling in motion. This is our example. Exciting ideas. How can ideas be exciting either in sense 1 or in sense 2? I find it very difficult to apply the definitions. You can imagine someone learning English for the first time and using the dictionary. To what extent is the dictionary useful in finding, in using those definitions and inferring word meaning? Second example, those meetings haven't taken place, but of course no one believes it because misinformation is much more exciting than the truth. So, how can misinformation be exciting? In those senses mentioned by the Oxford Dictionary or any other dictionary? The morale, the conclusion, is that word meaning, as used by native speakers, is much more complex, much more complicated than what the dictionaries claim to bring. So, vocabulary acquisition. How does an FL learner acquire word meaning? First, we suppose that a foreign language learner does not read dictionaries. He reads texts and uses the dictionary to explain text. So you have the text to the dictionary, and from the dictionary back again to the text to see the extent to which the definition provided by the dictionary accounts whether he can infer the word meaning by the help of the dictionary. L1 and L2. Here, not individual words. That's a word by itself is not important, but if it is put in a class, a category, then we can come up with generalization concerning those words in that category. Difficult for Moroccan AFL learners. And I assume, I take it for granted that we agree that the acquisition of exciting is difficult. I still remember when I was a high school teacher, I found difficulties to explain, to present this word. And I suppose even for advanced language learners, how many of you use exciting in a negative sense before this reading through the dictionary? I don't suppose that many Moroccan users of English use exciting in a negative sense, which means that they use the word only with a specific sense, not with all the senses of. In a sense, the acquisition of exciting and other emotion words are difficult. Why? The question is, are emotion terms universal or language particular? Emotions. And we need to distinguish between emotion and cognition. Emotion, of course, is not cognition, but the thinking about emotion is cognition. When you categorize emotions into categories, you store them, you retrieve them from memory, you contemplate them, you think about them, that's cognition. We're not questioning the universality of emotions as such, but emotion categories are emotion categories universal, or are they language or culture specific? And we need again to distinguish between emotion categories and emotion words, emotion terms. So we have love, hate, etc. Are these universal? I find that the acquisition of a word like love is much easier than the acquisition of a word like excitement. Perhaps because love, if it is not universal, at least it is widely attested in a number of languages, and so its acquisition should be easier than the acquisition of a concept that does not exist in L1. So, do emotion categories exist independently of language if they are not universal? Do emotion categories like love, hate, excitement, etc., do they exist independently of the language, and language merely provides the labels? Or the other alternative, do emotion terms create emotion categories? If emotion categories are universal, and if language merely provides the labels, then I suppose that there should not be any difficulty in the acquisition of emotion terms, because we simply replace one word by another. We replace love by we replace hate by karahiyya, because the category or is already there in cognition, and cognition is universal. But if emotion words or emotion categories, if emotion categories are not universal and they are specific to language or to a culture, then we have to expect that the acquisition of these categories should be difficult. I hope that the problem as stated here should not only be very clear, but also exciting. Exciting research. Yeah, because I formulated, by the way, researching emotion terms and emotion categories is not as deep as the research on color categories. I borrowed the formulation from the domain of color, research in color and color categories and color terms, to use them with emotion terms. And since emotion terms and emotion categories is not very widely researched, I hope that my presentation should be exciting you the desire to research the issue. Now, the case of excitement, why is it difficult for Moroccan EFL learners to acquire the full meaning of excitement? I suppose because the English language categorizes two opposite feelings, opposite for us, because we categorize emotions either as favorable or unfavorable. We do not have a category that includes both favorable and unfavorable emotions. So you see the transitive. This is taken, I think, from Microsoft Encarta. Verb stimulate favorably. That is, excite is to stimulate favorably, to cause somebody to feel enjoyment or pleasurable anticipation. The second meaning is to stimulate somebody unfavorably, to make a person or animal feel nervous, apprehension, or an unpleasant state of heightened emotion. I suppose this is the source of difficulty, because the English language puts together two opposite feelings, which Moroccan Arabic or Arabic in general does not do. Now, if you take the translation of excite or excitement in classical Arabic, in standard Arabic, إثارة, مثير, أثارة, at the ether is something. So if you focus on the meaning of ithara, I don't. First, the emotion of ithara is I find it strange to me. I'm not acquainted with it to use in it, and I don't suppose that it includes both negative and positive feelings. Anyway, in a sense, ithara, although not deeply rooted in language use in Arabic, does not correspond to excitement. And here is an example illustrating that emotions may not be universal. Some emotions, at least, are language specific or cultural specific. You can consult a book by Versbika. Anna Versbika has written so many articles, but she put the articles together in a book published, I think, in 1996, entitled Semantics, Culture and Cognition. Now here we have semantics, that is meanings of words and phrases, culture and cognition. She tackles the question of the universality of emotions in a particular chapter entitled Are Emotions Universal or Culture Specific? If excitement is not a universal emotion, again this is just a repetition, if excitement is not a universal emotion category and is not found in L1, how does the learner develop the concept? If he does not consult his L1 dictionary to acquire the L2 concept, how does he develop the concept? Again, it's the example. Is the rich input sufficient by itself to create the concept? If we present the learner with enough input to infer by himself or herself the concept of excitement. What happens when the input is not rich enough? That is at the level, the beginner's intermediate level, when the input in which the use of excitement to excite is not enough. What type of concept does the language learner develop? Here we need tests to measure the sort of concepts developed by foreign language learners. What roles in this process, what roles does the dictionary play in this process? More questions than answers, but if you appreciate the questions, I would be satisfied. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Dr. Shafi. It was really an exciting presentation. You can sense it. Right. So I think we move on directly to the second speaker. It's Dr. Master student in communication in context. Students' performance in writing between the culture.
Before, in the morning session and in the afternoon session, I can list an avalanche of ideas, plenty of words, concepts like curriculum, dictionary, encyclopedia, culture, ICT, identity, meaning, word meaning in context, dictionaries, research engines, ICT, is it less or curse? So I've been teaching for about 22 years, and I try to reflect on an issue that most students nowadays, and the idea of giving or writing this article comes from observation of the cognitive attitudes of many of my students, mainly their approach to knowledge and information, as well as their tactics in illustrating their acquisition of knowledge. Before I have to start, I have to thank, I owe that thanks to a couple of professors. The first one is Mr. Abdelmelki. I would like to thank Christian Bankov, professor of semiotics in the University of Sofia in Bulgaria. I would like to thank somebody's here, thank every single one, audience as well. Now, I really, it was during lunchtime as well, we were talking about issues, we were complaining a lot about how our students deal in life with learning and with writing. We always complain, and we say that our students are lazy, and this stems from a kind of laziness. I don't agree, because I went through the process. I tried to approach the issue in a very reflexive way, rather than just sit in judgment and having a blanket judgment. During the various types of exam and assignment, I really was appalled. I say, how come I've been teaching writing? And writing is one portion which is not given too much importance within the curriculum, right? And so students are more creative, but just submitted to me a kind of bricolage, you know, and the net. And I know that nowadays, whenever you assign something, the students or either teachers or whoever go to the net. If ever he tries to Google the word and the word does not pop up, he or she is frustrated, right? Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So, regardless of my efforts to fight and alter this kind of behavior or demeanors, I realized that I was opposing something far deeper from superficial laziness and a lack of motivation. So in fact, I found myself in a state of personal doubt. It's kind of, I say, what's that? About this issue, and the first preliminary hypothesis occurred to me. So I started to approach the phenomenon from a reflexive way. To conduct this study or research or paper, I adopted the methodology in collecting the data that encompasses, including the thesis in essay. So I asked this kind of questions to ALC students about how they deal with writing, because their pet peeve, one of the problems, is dealing with writing. You can assign someone, please, and most of the time students try to ask teacher, the exam is going to be oral or written? What do you think? Which one do you prefer, oral or written? Written. Now, oral, hands up. Written. And you want to cheat? Good, cool. Yeah, why not? Because because sometimes when you have to come up with a paper, that's really very confusing when you have to come up with a paper. Now, first it included the thesis in the essay topics, conducting interviews with students' habit of using internet, and arranging discussions with a group of students. So in order to touch up on using different tools in collecting the data. Now the theoretical framework, that's why I'm going to touch up on different points here, dealing with dictionaries, research engines like Google, Yahoo, personal identity from the critical sociology. And within this paper, I discussed the framework as threefold. First, my hypothesis concerns first the formation of individual portions of encyclopedia competence. This is a word that was coined by Roberto Oiko in his, and here we deal with the idea you mentioned about the word meaning. Is it just a single word, or should be put in a context? And the way how you categorize it and how you process it, is it universal or not? Here we have also the theory or hypothesis of Sapir, also of the language and the culture. So there are issues that intervene. It's a very complex issue you deal with. So I try to deal with the issue, especially with the advent of internet. The internet has apparently brought radical transformations, and we have talked about this issue, and we have been totalized by the issue evident in the students, because you can say it. Second, I endorse another perspective derived from the critical sociology. In this respect, I visited a number of convergent diagnoses of transformation of personal identity within the age of internet, especially in the younger generation. Such as, for example, I have here Frederick Jensen. This is the notion such as the schizophrenic subject, and we talked about schizophrenia. Within the youth now, they are isolated within different kind of fads and modes. They don't know what to deal with, what issue, how to sort out the problem. Unlike the old generation, we have the hard copies, books we refer to, and we have a kind of curriculum we know. English was English, French was French, Arabic was Arabic. Now there are a lot of subjects that pop up within the academia, for example, like subjects that we don't need in real life, in the market. The students now sometimes, I'm not to blame you, but I know that we have to diagnose well the problem in order to cater for a kind of tentative remedy. I'm not saying that I'm going to do the remedy, but a tentative one. I visited the number, as I said, that schizophrenic subject 1991, the breakdown of temporality, or what enabled to form a coherent ego, and also Bowman uses the notions of liquid subject in 1998, wearing identities as clothes. And here I think I have to do with the personal, different or multiple personas that person adopt or endorse while using the internet and Facebook or chat. You endorse different personas, and these personas are not eternal, ephemeral, fragmented units that you endorse, like you endorse different hats in life. And then we have also the Robert Dufour. Here they symbolize the subject, and it's 2003. And the last one, Jeremy Fernick, is the routine formation of mathematical identities, 1992. My third hypothetical input, I was really inspired from the short study of the way in which research engines have evolved and why Google now dominates the fundamental component in internet, what we call the global encyclopedia. And here Google, I know whenever, Uncle Google, whenever you have something, the first engine you refer to, what is it? Google. So Uncle Google is always there to help, to give a hand. Now I have to, as I told you before, I have to deal with the, from the theoretical framework of encyclopedic competence by Umberto Eco, the model of culture as encyclopedia. According to Umberto Eco, by the way, is a semi-addition, an Italian semi-addition. He is a philosopher as well. He has a lot of writings. He has some of the publications about limitations, yeah, and limitations of interpretations, limitations of interpretations, and the meaning also. Okay. Now, besides the encyclopedia as an object, so we have first to determine or define what encyclopedia means. It is a recorded sum of all interpretations. There's no one single interpretation. And here we go back to the idea of Ronald Barthes, that meaning is never static. It's something which it's there and is the reader. And here the meaning, the reader who is, text is something, is like a lazy machine, and it's the role of the reader to shake it up. Yeah. Also it is possessed by in different ways by different users. I mean, everyone has got his own competence. It is used by different people in different ways, acquired in different ways. It also accommodates contradictory interpretations, textual activity based on encyclopedia, and operating under the contradiction to the encyclopedia. Then Eco obtained this essential description of the model after passing through various phases, because this work on encyclopedia develops into a battle horse against ontological structuralism. You know structuralism? And now he wanted to go and fight this notion of structuralism. And encyclopedic competence is a ground for the interplay between the author and the reader. The text, as I mentioned before, is a lazy machine. It needs a lot of contribution on the side of the reader to reveal. Here, I will talk in the morning that the reader is not a consumer, but also a producer of a meaning. And we talked in the morning that a person should be producer of meaning, a student, a teacher development. A teacher is someone who is not abide by the book, but he has to think outside the book, because the book is not a kind of prescribed thing. You can bring a book, but you can shape it according to the needs of students, according to the dynamics in the class. And we have to be careful of the dynamics in the class. If you have a clear depiction of what happened inside the classroom, and you understand and you connect to your learners, I won't call them students, I call them learners. I think you have to cater for activities or curriculum where they have to pick up whatever thing, language or whatever. You have to involve them. And I agree when you mentioned the curriculum in UK, when the students, there is no timetable for a teacher, just for the teacher but not for students, students decide. So but to what extent our students are well equipped with a kind of encyclopedia, an encyclopedia means kind of competence to gauge, to judge, decide what is good for them and what is bad for them. So I think if they are not nudged and aware of these kind of things, they cannot reach a kind of maturity. I think I will proceed and I will show you how I diagnose this behavior. I'm not behavior of students doing poorly in writing. The text is a lazy machine and needs a lot of contributions on the side of the reader. Now here again, I quote one saying from Ronald Barthes. It's a text called From Work to Text. It is a text that has no fixed meaning. And here we have the polysyllabic, different meanings in a text. Also, since meaning has no entity, it has no locus. The meaning has no place. And here, either the meaning of a word, is it like for love or excited? Does it have a kind of locus, I mean, a culture? Or is it something that is universal? That it's up to you, you construct, is a social construct. You construct that meaning. It's not something that exists outside in the outside world. Now, the encyclopedia is a regulative hypothesis. It's a kind of hypothesis about the global semantic structure, which is dynamically derivative from living processes in every culture community. Here, it's like an infinite semiosis. And here, semiosis is the process of making and using science and generating meaning. We have here a couple of definitions of semiosis. First by Silas, 1986. He said that semiosis is a process of making and using science, whereas Umberto Eco, 1976, he said that process by which empirical subjects communicate. It is regulated. I mean, this semiosis or this encyclopedic competence is regulated by pragmatically and temporarily established semantic conventions. Therefore, our encyclopedia is co-extensive with culture, opening the universe of meaning to an infinite variety of content from beyond linguistic centrism. Here I have to go to the book called by Umberto Eco in Semiotics and Philosophy of Language, 1984. Eco makes a description of an encyclopedia which is closest to what internet is today. And here I go back to the idea of professor when he said, which dictionary are we supposed to refer to get a meaning? I think if there is nothing that stems from inside, that was built up with hard copies, that means from books. If you just, for example, do research on Google, and you get the response, you write it, you hand it to a professor or someone, it's not something that is everlasting, something that comes from here or from here. It's something which is automatic. It comes from the outside. It's not something that comes from the inside. So because we are supposed to this, and this is something that happened through our socialization, because as kids, as youngsters, it's something that we were real so. He uses the model of this encyclopedia to deconstruct, and here we go to the word deconstruction with Derrida, and the deconstruction was like a kind of upheaval in France, and was adopted also by Spivak in post-colonial theory. So I think deconstruction is really very important, because without this microphone, if I were just talking to my students, I want to be talking the same way I'm talking now. So we have to deconstruct the city to see what what I'm saying is authentic from heart to heart, or just something because I have to speak so. So deconstruction of institutions, deconstructions of every single thing of the system, the educational system in general. The whole tradition in the Western, because he did something very important, Dr. Eco, because he deconstructed the traditional, when people said that knowledge, the representation of knowledge was like a tree. He said, no, it's not like a tree, it's something else. Now, with on the level of individual encyclopedic competence, Eco reconciled two opposed ways of existence of knowledge in dialectical relation. We have two: categorical, that means something is a result of accumulated, affirmed, collected experience, something you accumulate and you get, or something observational, that means like using a kind of scientific dichotomy. It's something from internet and thing. Am I wrong? No? Okay.
It's exciting.
You want to sleep, or you want to learn more? Okay, good. I know, because I want to interact from time to time. This is our students, but sometimes in the class we have to interact. When your students are doing like this, you feel that something is wrong. There is no connection. So you have to bring something. You have to be creative. You bring a joke, you bring something in order to make them, again, to boost them. Boost them. And sometimes when you feel that someone is yawning, try to make them stand up and stretch a little bit, and then come back and make. Because in yeah, I think you. Yeah, it's exciting, absolutely. What's that?
That's an old way to waken up.
What do you mean?
If you want to wake somebody up, so you have to, as you say,
yeah. No, that's stretch. Don't blush. No, that's stretch. Because if you want, no. On the contrary, I mean, you have to try it. Just stand up now and stretch, and you will see. Stand up. No. It's not stretching. This is belly dance. Stretching is something like this. Okay, never mind. Okay, so there is an analogy between the internet research engine and Eco's hypothesis about the passage from dictionary to encyclopedia. There's a change. But I think now with the new generation, with the internet, there is the other way around. It's from encyclopedia to dictionaries. You see, you pick up something and then you are satisfied. But the next day, if I ask you about the assignment, will you remember every single thing? Okay. Silence means yes. This first phase of the invasion, the internet was dominated by Yahoo, and you know Yahoo is very Porphyrian-like portal, you know? And whereas the second phase is dominated by Google, and here we have the rhizomatic core. And the rhizome, you know what's a rhizome? Rhizome is a stem from which the plants is a kind of points. It's like the net. The net, there are points, there are lines, and they have no end, they have no inside and no outside, and they are hyperlinks. I mean, you can go from here and there is no end. As soon as you go into one website, there are hyperlinks, and you go to another one, so and so on. This is what happens in the human mind when you are well equipped with ideas and things, so you can start, you can talk till the next day. And this is one of the things that we used to have in our tradition with grandma, when they used to tell us stories at night and non-stop, and the next day we have to say, okay, you fall asleep, and the next day you ask, what was the ending? So you see, I mean, these people were equipped with experience, not just bringing ready-made things from the net. At the end of the 1990s, Google arrived on, I mean, even in the States, there is what we call the chip, violence. I mean, there's a kind of chip that blocks any program which is shows violence. But you cannot tell. Maybe your son or your daughter or your student go somewhere else and check other kind of things. So you don't have, it's kind of culture that we have to nudge, we have to encourage. And how you show your students. I mean, and I think within the curriculum, we should do kind of study skills. It's something which is really missing in our curriculum, is study skills to make people, because sometimes I think I'm digging in my experience, professors are digging in the experience, how they learn the language, how they reach in such status. But I think we made a lot of efforts, but I think we can share this through what we call study skills. And study skills are very important. It's a class, of course, in States, in France, in Spain, all over the world. In Morocco, you have to give yourself a headache, and you have to fight. And that's really very, very, very difficult. I'm not blaming the students, but we just a kind of reflection about the issue. For the requirement of this study, I examine which transformation of identity, and it's very important about we have to understand the self. I would say, in the morning someone say, we have to understand the self in order to deal with the other. And even the idea of the other and the self, I know I'm running out of time. Okay. I haven't covered the term. Okay, for the requirement of this study, I examine which transformation of identity of the internet generations have formed the habit of using more and more intelligent search engines, particularly on the level of this competence, which is the encyclopedic competence, to explain the identity changes. We refer to Lacan's model of schizophrenia, or breakdown of the signifying chain, while we utilize Bowman's liquid modernity. And here we have modernity and consumerism, when people consume are more consumers than producers of anything. I mean, you want just to consume. We consume media, we consume even our, if we are having a lecture, we consume it. Do you reflect on it? You reflect on it and give your reactions? But what do you think about given reactions, written reactions? I'm asking students. When you are supposed to give a written reaction. Thank you. I agree with you. I agree with you. I agree. Yeah, I agree. I agree. I agree. Sorry? Not acceptable. Yeah, because we have to have, it's a kind of punishment from the teacher, but I think reactions, okay, I will come to this idea later. When we examine the weakening, I mean, there is a weakening of the personal identity nowadays, caused by the exaggerated adaptiveness to the present circumstances. I mean, we also rely on the consuming life. We are consuming to shed light on how one examines the commodification of the identity. Our identity becomes like a commodity, like a product. We sell and we consume. Now, psychologists and sociologists have begun to note the change taking place in the cognitive development among youngsters. They are so-called dot-com generation. The generation is called dot-com generation. Whatever you are given, you just go and you don't. I mean, scarcely you go through the books. It's not mine. It's just I borrow it from somewhere else. So there are young people who are growing up in front of computer screens, they spend time in chat rooms, simulated environments. They seem to develop what psychologists call multiple personas. And here multiple personas is a postmodern, again, lifestyle that go exactly in the opposite direction of constructive praxis. I mean, here the cultural logic of capitalism affirms the life consumption than life construction. We consume more than we construct. I mean, I think whenever I give an assignment to some of the students or kind of presentation, I say, teacher, I don't have time. And the next time you can find him in a cafe or somewhere or doing something. Oh, please, do you want me to print? Do you want me to read your slides? And you know, bring it. Or teacher, I just hand you it's written. Okay, I say, why? I mean, you have to enjoy every single task you're assigned. Because when you learn, I think it's a headache at the beginning, but later on, you enjoy it. You know, it's very gratifying when you give yourself a headache and you fight, and then you come up with something that is going to be everlasting here or here. I think here. Rather than good. In this respect, before proclaim the birth of a new man, I'm sorry here, ladies here, I will change. I will say new man or woman, because I don't want to sound a little bit gender biased. So he said the new man, and here for ladies, man or woman. Okay? Are you okay?
Yeah.
Good. Thank you. His main point is that the logic of neoliberalism imposes an abolition of the Kant's critical subject and the Freudian neurotic subject. In other words, the conditions of the formation of the generation prevent them from becoming critical and developing the superego. I think I'm running out of time, so I will go to straight to some of the findings. According to Lacan, the superego is formed in the symbolic phase. I told you that Lacan, the development of identity is first we have the real phase, then the imaginary, and then we have the symbolic. And the writing, I'm speaking about the writing. Writing is a symbolic task. It's something that you retrieve from your experience, from the real, and from the imaginary, something you dealt with. And here I have to quote something very important. In vain, the kids nowadays, they don't interact with the parents. They don't learn from parents or learn from teachers. They learn more from the net and from internet. So in vain, those efforts are not that instant, because the new generation of parents, also the parents have a hand in that, is also dominated by consumerism. They consume. The kids are faced with an abundance of visual, imaginary information about the world that they never develop the need to verbal narrative. They're always offered Game Boy, they are offered things from an early age. So how can you, for example, sometimes say, oh, my son does not want to read, but you buy things to the son or the daughter, toys, Game Boy, Iwi, or I don't know what's that, they buy. So I'm reading, I want to give him, all right, I'm reading, so he's going to read or she's going to read. No way, because you nudge him on another way. So you preach something and you practice something else. Okay? Because you don't want headaches, I guess. You buy him that stuff, you don't want to have headaches. Now, according to Lacan, the superego is formed in the symbolic phase, in which it is formed normal for parents to the main source of information about the world. And just to sum up here, the mission of the educational institutions, it's not here, educational institutions, is, including universities and colleges, is to absorb a floating population whose relationship with knowledge is no more than a secondary spawning. Spawning here happen from now and then, is regularly, on not a regular basis, but on a regular basis. It is undeniable that something does not work in the didactic communication. at the university after the advent of internet. What is internet? I think that students, a lot of teachers complain about the students' overuse of internet. Hence, ECHO model of encyclopedia helps to understand and analyze the phenomenon. ECHO said that this Google, internet for the old generation. For the old generation, the internet has a utilitarian function. We use it when we need to search something. But for the new generation, it has an sorry, I have to solve my throat. I've been talking too much. It has an existential function. That means this generation cannot work without using the net. If you give them, okay, read this book, would you say yes, teacher, or chapter? Or you're gonna look for the shortest chapter? Thank you. To answer the question, to answer the question why are students so reluctant to write? Before reply that this development has been arrested in the imagining phase. That is to say, they are so unprepared for the symbolic exercise as writing. In the same respect, ECHO could say that their thinking is no longer based on local dictionaries. That means internalized structure, portions of encyclopedic competence, but on rhizomatic, externalized encyclopedias. That means something from the outside. All in all, the internet and its access through the intermediation of those quasi-minds, means research engines, are among the most important factors for the expansion of postmodern fragmented identity. The identity means the culture of navigation and not the culture of erudition, something knowledge. Here as an outlet, as how to sort out this problem, I dealt with the issue of, just 1 minute, it's possible, 1 minute. We have to introduce rhetorics within the university. I think if rhetoric is concerned with anything, it is concerned with understanding communication as inevitably linked to the accomplishment of purposes. Now, the teaching of writing is not less than the teaching of reasoning. It is an attempt not to transmit, receive knowledge, but to engage and guide students in discovering and clarifying ideas in the context of written communication. Because writing is also, you communicate. You communicate to someone that you don't see. So unlike when you verbal face-to-face communication, you can use verbal and non-verbal, you can get some facial feedback, you can get some response. But when you are writing a package that you hand to someone, and you have to articulate. This is a kind of punctuation. When you speak about punctuation in communication, for example, when I raise my voice, as a teacher, you lower your voice, and so on and so forth. Also, there is punctuation. There is also, there are a lot of things that we have to incorporate within the curriculum. It is an attempt to develop and strengthen the abilities of the individual people to imagine, to reason, to judge in the medium of writing. Teaching students to document, and using here MLA and PA, I think that when you deal with research for undergrad or for even for master students, sometimes, or even PhD, students encounter problems with research methods, with documentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Bekliet. It was really an interesting presentation, very rich and very informative. Now we move on to Professor Mohamed Abisha. He's a master's student in Applied Linguistics, first year. His presentation is in
participation in the T program. It's a Teaching Excellence and Achievement. It's an exchange program. It's a professional development program at the Montana State University, and I'm happy to share this topic with you, service learning, which is in vogue in the US. My presentation is outlined as follows: a definition of service learning, examples of service learning projects, benefits of service learning, stages of service learning, and some benefits using service learning in the EFL class, and then the conclusion. When students don't see the connection between the content of the course and their future lives, they question what's happening. right? Don't see the connection between the content of your course and the future life. So, okay, everything. So you question what's happening, what the teacher asking, or what the teachers are asking us. So research confirms that relevance is a critical factor in maintaining students' interest and motivation. This idea, or the idea behind service learning, is to link the classroom with the outside world. To link the inside, as our friend this morning said, with the outside. To link theory with practice. Okay? So with service learning, students are feeling that they are part of the learning process and not an object of the learning process. So what is service learning? Here's a definition. It's a teaching and learning strategy that integrates meaningful community service with instruction and reflection to enrich the learning experience, teach civic responsibility, and strengthen communities. Okay? So service learning is an amalgam or a combination of service and learning. It's service with learning objectives and learning with service objectives. Service is taken from community service, and learning is taken from formal academic learning. So it's a combination. The concept is not new, it's not uniquely American, it's evidenced in many different countries all over the world in different disciplines, not only specific or discipline. And the hyphen between service and learning, as you see, the hyphen between service and learning is purposeful. It denotes the balance between the service and the learning activity outcomes resulting from the partnership experience. Partnership between the classroom and the community, between the students and the community partners. As you see, in service learning, we have this, the benefit is for both. It's bi-directional. It's both for classroom and for the community. As opposed to community service or volunteerism, the benefit is only for the community. Okay? So what service learning looks like? Here we have an example. Picking up trash by a riverbed or from a stream river is service, or streambed river is service. Studying water samples under a microscope is learning. But when students collect and analyze water samples, and the local pollution control agency uses the findings to clean up the river, that is service learning. So the benefit is for both, for the classroom, for the students, the learners, and for the community. Here we have examples of service learning projects. Elementary school students tutor younger students and improve their mastery of essential literacy skills. This is an ideal project for EFL classes, where elementary school students tutor younger students. Okay? Math students make calculations that persuade local authorities to install a traffic light near their school to reduce accidents at a dangerous intersection. This is for a math class. Another example of a project for history students. They research the local heroes identified on plaques in their community and share what they have learned at a ceremony. And another project is for language arts students. So they hone their writing skills by organizing a campaign to reduce bullying on their school buses or in the school walls and classroom walls. And, there's plenty of bullying in the class. Service learning projects have 4 consistent elements. Curricular integration, so service learning is an academic endeavor supporting students' learning. Organized service activities, the contributions and the gains of, staff and that is teachers and students set the stage for must be regularly in a constant dialogue about the project. Reciprocity, contributions and gains from the project are shared between the classroom and the community. And reflection, it's a very important element. We are going to see it later. So it's where students make meanings of their experience. The following table compares service learning at the bottom of the table with other so community activities and instructional strategies. Okay, and it's the only activity or service activity that includes reciprocity, right at the middle of the table, reciprocity and reflection. It's the only activity, service activity, that includes reciprocity and reflection. Some benefits of service learning, adapted from the National and Community Service Act of 1990, requires use of problem-solving skills and critical thinking. Provides opportunities for social skills and respectful conversation techniques. I suppose most questions from the morning session are found in this in service learning. Relates academic skills and concepts to social issues and community needs. Provides relationship building opportunities. Invigorates school climate and the enthusiasm for attendance. Engages students who may be disengaged or struggling academically, students at stake. Promotes learning through active participation. Service learning provides opportunities to use skills and knowledge in real life situations. Fosters a sense of caring for others. Community members become more connected to their young people. And Professor Luke mentioned this morning that there is a gap, or I think Mr. Aki, there's a gap between the community and the school. Okay? And also, service learning motivates students' learning and increases content retention. Retention is very important. So the learning pyramid here. Okay, so we all teach, but how much our students learn out of our teaching? So when the learning pyramid shows that when students are involved and engaged, learning takes place and the retention is very high. Involve them and they will know. The saying goes, involve them and they will know. So you see, service learning is at the base of the pyramid where the retention rates are high, 75 and 90%. So here the process of service learning, or the big picture, show you the stages of service learning. There are 5 stages, and they are independent. They are related. Okay, so the first one is investigation. Teacher and student look for potential community problem that they might address, and it usually involves some sort of research and mapping activity. It's a research. Planning and preparation. The teacher and student and community member sequence the learning and service activities and address the administration issues and the logistics and funding, okay, for their project. Action, it is the service itself. It is implementing the service activity. It is the heart of the project and the core of service learning. Reflection, so here it's a pause button. Students must hit the pause button to reflect on their experience, to explore the impact of what they are learning and its effect on their thought and their future lives. Reflection is the sine qua non of the service learning. And the last stage is demonstration or celebration, that is students and community participants and others publicly share what they have learned. Media coverage can be included, celebrate the results of service projects and look for the future. Some benefits using service learning in the EFL class. Service learning engages students with meaningful content. Service learning experiences can provide language students with comprehensible input as they interact with community members and with text relevant to their project. Interaction with community members and with context or with text relevant to their project. In service learning projects, learners have multiple opportunities for producing comprehensible or pushed output as they reflect on their project. So reflection is very important. And reflection can take many forms as discussion, presentation, or writing, any kind of writing. Service learning experiences allow students to focus on content and interaction rather than language forms. So content and interaction, thus increasing students' motivation for learning. And that covers everything I want to say. So I'd like to conclude, I'd like to leave you with the following thought by John Dewey, mentioned this morning. He's an American philosopher. So if we teach today's students as we taught yesterday's students, we rob them of tomorrow. So we have to deconstruct everything, okay? Thank you for coming today.
Thank you, Professor Linguistics, again for your presentation. This is, I think, an experience from the US side. Yes, we wish to apply similar projects over here in Morocco. As I have, I don't know if, yes, you listened to me this morning in, in my comments.
Most questions are
Exactly. So even the students would like to have such projects and be involved.
It goes from kindergarten to higher education.
Okay, now I open the floor for discussions, and your questions are welcome. Yes, we start.
First question goes to Professor Shafi. So knowing that words have too many different meanings, and generally teachers push and emphasize students to use the dictionary, how can we expect learners to pick up the appropriate meaning? And are there some effective strategies that learners can resort to in order to pick up the appropriate meaning? And the second question goes to Professor Bisha. Can we apply service learning in all contexts, or is it applicable only in specific situation?
Thank you.
Moderator and our professor too. So my question is dedicated to the professor who talked about policing. And my question is about the universality of emotions. Do we think that those expressions used again to express emotion are universal? I do think that they are cultural specific, but sometimes they are universal too. When they are metaphorical, they tend to be cultural specific, but when they represent the embodiment of the physique of human beings, I think they tend at that time to be universal. And thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Appreciate the presentations that we had offered so far. I mean, in adding what we have so far, I think it's the drawbacks of the technology now on the learners. I mean, before this, we can speak of culture. I mean, we have in our social interaction. Before that, we can speak of the television addiction. Okay, I mean, before this children become a learner, okay, they have spent a lot of time consuming this media. Okay, in terms of forms, maybe TV addiction, or let's say social networks like Facebook or anywhere. Okay, but I think that because I have heard some statistics in the United States of America that I think 60 hours per week children spend time in front of television, a full-time job, watching nonsense. This has caused a lot of problems, a lot of damage in terms of the social interaction, okay, between the child and their parents and the, let's say, the surroundings and the context where they live. Then this creates some kind of isolation. It's just less interactive, okay, and this less interaction was brought with him to the classroom, okay. Since from the beginning, he's a passive learner. Okay. So what do you think that, how can we just overcome this problem? Because we have not to stop that the technology of this Google or Facebook is, we stop at that and just we take as the first and preliminary problem. But we have to consider that there are certain, let's say, preliminary problems before coming to treat them in the classroom. Okay, maybe you get the point? The question is that do you have any idea how can we develop some kind of remedy, efficient remedy, okay, for the children before coming to the classroom, before they become learners, okay? I mean, for example, how can we stop them from spending a lot of time in front of television, okay? And this, of course, causes some kind of isolation, okay? There's a context. But this will bring with them to the classroom and will become less active. And this will bring passiveness to terms of their learning.
So what age are we talking about?
What?
What age?
Oh, early age, right? Before they finish the classroom, before 7.
That means below 5.
Yes.
Because I mean, the kindergarten school, they start around 3 and 3 sometimes 2. But I mean, they start around at the age of 5.
Yes.
So before 5, you mean?
Yes.
Okay.
And video games too. Video games.
Video games.
It's a pleasure for being here, all of you. I got two questions. The first question is directed to Mr. Shafi. I would like you briefly to explain to us what are the implications and limitation of your study, I mean. And the other question is directed to Mr. Beklia. Repeat, just the implications and the limitations of the study that you have talked about. Yeah. The second question, is it possible to take advantage of the internet to make of the students creative writers? Is there any way to make the internet as a tool to develop the students' creativity in writing? Okay? And it's not only appearance, it could be the opposite. Thank you.
Presentations. Right. So just I would like to go back to the teaching of lexical competence, right? And I was expecting, some practical tips on how to implement, how to teach things systematically, to students. I know that's not enough to produce a new sound and put it on an already familiar word, object, help, laugh, and so on. That's not enough. That's not understanding. That is recognition. What we're doing here in this particular context is that we're trying, or we're expecting students to recognize the word, right? But the problem with, let's say, the lexical competence is that it's always been more or less neglected in our teaching, and that is the problem. If you go back to the 60s, that was perhaps the first writings on how to teach things, systematically to students. As, the use of dictionary, right? That's part of study skills. And it requires a lot of training, right? I'm thinking of, when you say students, coming to know English for the first time, it's very demanding on that part, right? Because at that particular stage, right, the needs are not that clear to us as teachers. They are sort of learning English for no obvious reasons. It's not really like the university level, tertiary education, that's different, right? So I think we, as practitioners here, we need to make things easier for, this audience, sort of professional audience. Instead, let's say, of saying, if you go back to the word, there are plenty. What about words in those idioms, in those idiomatic expressions, which, you know, the meaning is very often opaque. You cannot break down, you know, any idiom into several units and start, you know, explaining things in isolation from each other. So I think, so that's enough of vocabulary. I would like to go back to writing. I was waiting for, you know, that sort of reading and writing going together, hand in hand, like a horse and a cart forever.
Absolutely.
To use these insurances things. And thank you very much. Thanks a lot.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Also not to favor a lot the internet, because normally we should give our students, because I also advise my students to use the net. But unfortunately, when we have research papers by the end of the semester, what do we have? Well, it's not 8 definitions, but it's 25 definitions, for example, at least, of the keywords. And also cut and paste. So this is passiveness. This is the real passiveness of the student, is they don't read at all what is presented as information in the net. They don't have critical minds, because this is what you are asking for. But just, I'm not generalizing, of course. I mean, I'm sorry for the audience, but we are observers. We do correct your, yes. Yeah, we do, and we observe and we realize, okay? So we don't just take things that you give us and, yes, and we are not, if you want, we don't react to what you give us as writings, okay? So my question is, and how to overcome. It's not yet time to say how to overcome this, because we cannot overcome this situation right now. Because as you say, we give our children toys and PlayStation games, and we say they don't read, unfortunately, and they don't write well, unfortunately. Yeah, we do participate too, but we have a dilemma as well as parents, because they see others playing with, having video games, playing and having laptops, and yes, so we say it's not our right to deprive them from the same devices. So we are not modern parents if we don't provide them with these devices. So we do, but at the same time we ask ourselves, so when to give them this reading, these, for example, short stories to read, or so it's our duty to organize their time. So once reading and once, okay, doing with them, sharing with them means the playing with the PlayStations and doing with them to the net. And